I now recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Torres, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chair Atkins, I've long been a believer in emerging technologies like crypto and blockchain, but as you know, every industry has actors good and bad. Crypto is no exception. So have you taken any enforcement action against any bad actor in the crypto industry?
Yes, I mean, we have brought cases for fraud, outright fraud, and we're in litigation with some of those right now.
Involving digital assets?
Involving digital assets, one actually up in your city or up in New York.
Understood. I want to make 3 observations about structural shifts in the stock market and then have you respond. First, the stock market is more passive than it has been historically. Since 2020, passive strategies have accounted for a majority of U.S. equity assets under management. Second, the stock market is more concentrated than it has been historically. The top 10 account for 40% of the S&P 500's market cap, about a third of the S&P 500's total earnings, and about a majority or near majority of the S&P 500's earnings growth. And finally, the stock market is less representative of the economy than it has been historically. The number of public companies, as you have noted, has fallen by around 50% since the 1990s. Many of America's most dynamic, highest growth companies have yet to go public, and many of them are content to remain private for longer stretches of time. So the stock market is more passive, more concentrated, less representative than it has been historically. Since the stock market is structured differently than it has been, should we expect the stock market to perform differently than it has historically? Is the stock market of the 21st century qualitatively different from the stock market that has delivered an annualized return of 10% since 1959? What are the significance of these structural shifts, and what does it mean for the performance of the market?
Yeah, great question. So I don't pretend to have an answer, but that's exactly why we need to make it more attractive, or attractive again, to be a public company, so that we can have more of a diverse type of makeup there. And so, in fact, there's this great story about, I was told by the CEO of a very, very large public pension fund where they got out of the private markets back in after the financial crisis. They call it the dark years, where they lost, they went down from 90% coverage of their anticipated benefits down into the 70s, and they attribute that to not being involved in the private market. So to have a well-diversified portfolio, you need to have exposure to private markets. If we can make IPOs great again, make public companies make up a much more diverse type of the marketplace, I think we can maybe solve that part of the problem and get back to your point.
I'm cautiously optimistic about tokenization. I do believe tokenization has the potential to create a better, cheaper, and faster financial system, greater tradability, instantaneous settlement, greater liquidity, greater fractionalization of shares, and hopefully with it, a greater democratization of finance. Just like digitization through the internet brought a wave of new consumers to commerce, tokenization could bring a wave of new investors to the capital markets. Having said all that, an innovation like tokenization is not without risk. And so how do we pursue an innovation that disrupts traditional securities without destabilizing a traditional securities regime that has served our nation reasonably well for more than 90 years?
No, I agree with you very much. And so that's why we'll do this deliberatively. We will make sure that issuers have insight into where their securities are, and that tokenized securities are securities and will be treated as such, and that we need to adjust where we have to the rules, but to ensure that there's transparency, integrity to the markets, and to make sure that the national market system is upheld.
Do you have a timeline for the tokenization of securities, or?
It'll be unfolding here over the next few years, but what we do now will be really seminal in making sure that it's done deliberatively and in good order.
And what are the implications of tokenized securities for corporate governance? It's been said that tokenized securities could mean the end of proxy voting. What is your sense of the implications?
I think it might be even more, it might be better for it, frankly, because then you'll know where securities are, and who's, you won't know voting necessarily, but I think there'll be a lot more accountability and transparency.
I see my time is about to expire. Thank you.